Welcome to the D2 Baseball Podcast, your top source for all things D2 Baseball. Before we jump into today's episode, I've got some exciting news. Are you looking to reach a passionate, engaged audience? We're now offering ad spots on our podcast. By advertising with us, you'll connect with thousands of dedicated D2 Baseball fans, including players, coaches, and avid supporters. Here's why you should consider partnering with us. Targeted reach. Engage a specific audience that loves D2 baseball. High engagement. Our listeners are loyal and tuned in regularly. Affordable rates. Competitive pricing for all budgets. Flexible formats. Choose from pre-roll, mid-roll, or post-roll ads. Interested? Email us at diviibaseball@gmail.com to learn more and secure your spot. Let's hit it out of the park together. Thanks for considering this opportunity. Now, let's get to today's episode of the D2 Baseball Podcast. Welcome into the D2 Baseball Podcast. Joined alongside Josh Keim here today. About a month ago, it was announced that he was making his return back to Florida as he'll lead the St. Leo Lions, being named their head coach in late June. So he's been at the helm this summer, getting ready for his first year as the head coach there, but did spend part of a season as an assistant coach, that shortened season. And previously, he was head coach for a highly successful Blackhawk Community College team, a place where you guys had a lot of success there, and you're going to try to carry that over, Josh, here to St. Leo. Talk about the transition, how it's been returning back to Florida.
Yeah, first off, just thank you both, for having me on here and just shedding some light on our program at St. Leo. It's been everything that you would think. It's been crazy, getting down here and starting the transition of bringing in our staff and bringing in players, filling our needs that we think we have. It's been crazy with the move and finding a place to live and, figuring out what we need to do and what projects we have and getting started on our 2025 class and figuring out those needs and getting to know our current guys. There's so many things on this list that we've had to do in a really short amount of time to prepare for day one of class, which is next Monday. So thankfully, a lot of colleges start today. We start next Monday, which gives us some more time to breathe and figure out some things this week. But it's been exciting. It's great to be back. I think this is a really special place. I like to consider St. Leo a hidden gem. And so it's great to be back at St. Leo in the Sunshine State Conference in Florida.
And Coach, I find it very interesting, and I'm very curious to see, what was that process like, from potentially interviewing with St. Leo or seeing the job opening at St. Leo, interviewing, and then now becoming the head coach at St. Leo?
Yeah, I was at Blackhawk for 4 years, and I never really thought of leaving. I was all in, and that's one of my things, being all in. And so I never looked. I never thought about it. When this opened, there was interest from both sides. And so that's what made it more appealing to me, is to be, at a place like that where there is interest and you have familiarity with the university and the program itself. And so for me, that was really important. When I went through the process and came down, it just reminded me of how special this place is. And so, I hadn't been down here in, I think, 4 years. And when I got back on campus, it just kind of reignited that, that passion that I do have for this place. And so, when the opportunity came, for me at that point, it was a no-brainer, because I do think St. Leo is a really special place, and it's close to my family and I, having been here before. My wife coached here. My brother, who is now an assistant coach of mine, is a graduate and played in this program. And so there's so many ties to this university that made it a no-brainer. But going back to it, I never looked or anything like that. It was going to have to be something that was meant to be. And this is what St. Leo was for my family and I.
And off of that, when we talk about your career path, just for the people that don't know, you played at Black Hawk. That's where you started your college career, then Illinois State, then St. Joe's. I know you're going to shake your head because you know this is your path, but just for those that don't know, then you go to Quincy, right? Right out of college, you're going to Quincy, assuming part of that connection was, Raby and Odette's connection. You're at Quincy, then St. Leo, then Black Hawk, and now St. Leo again. I want to ask about Black Hawk. That was kind of your first time leading a program. It's yours. You're the head coach. And I was reading some things. You were more than just the head coach. You were dealing with compliance. You were serving on certain boards. It looked like there were a lot more things involved with that role across and other things, eligibility, academic support. Talk to me a little bit about that experience. And do you think those roles helped you, or is that just kind of the nature of the beast at that particular institution?
So I think it's that nature of the beast at that level. I think in order, to be a full-time coach, you have to take on other responsibilities at the junior college level. And so that was part of it. What I've learned, though, since I've been here in this month is my roles as academic success coach, as compliance, really anything that, I could do to help the athletic department has really prepared me for some of the things that I've done in this last month that I didn't know about the first time around as an assistant coach. And so that experience with compliance and understanding how all that stuff works has made this transition smoother for me in the role as head coach now, getting these guys, registered with the eligibility center and transcripts and all those things that go into recruiting. I understand it way more now that I had done that for 4 years and really became really accustomed to it, during those 4 years. But I think the biggest thing for me, and you can see it with my path, even though I played at a couple of different colleges, which back then wasn't normal per se. And now it's, I didn't play hardly at any colleges compared to some kids, is loyalty, right? It's loyalty. And so I've been really fortunate to be around great coaches going back to my youth playing days. And so I was taught loyalty from a really young age, and that stuck with me. And I think that's part of this transition is because I am so loyal. Like I said, I never thought I'd leave Black Hawk. I wore the black and gold. I played there. I had a ton of pride in that place, and I still do. I always will. But loyalty is big to me and where I go, where my family and I go. And that's a place like St. Leo. And so you can see that in my path. Even though I was only here a year before, it's not that I wasn't loyal or anything like that. An opportunity came about that, without that opportunity, I'm probably not sitting here right now talking to you guys.
And Coach, you talk about that, brief opportunity at St. Leo, as brief as it is, you don't even finish an entire season because of the pandemic. Talk a little bit about like that shortened experience, being an assistant at St. Leo.
So I got the fall experience, right, with practice and how things were ran and the recruiting and how it's a little different in the state of Florida. So I got that experience. And then going into the spring, I think we only played 2 Sunshine State Conference series. And so I like to say I don't have much experience with the conference. We'll get that experience this year. And I don't think that's a bad thing either, having been at Quincy and going to a World Series and seeing what it takes to play at an extremely high level. So we're going to gain that experience as we go this year, with the conference, the layout, the weekend series is, we have a great idea of how it all runs, right? And we've all coached at this level. but it's going to be a whole nother thing to actually finish a season, here in 2025. And that's going to be the biggest difference between my time here in 2020. We were just starting to roll in 2022 when it came to a halt. We had won, I think it was 4 or 5 in a row, and that's when it came to a halt. So we started to gain some momentum in that season too.
And speaking of momentum, I know last season, St. Leo, incredible. I mean, you talk about the year, especially at the start of the year. I mean, Robert and I look at stats all the time, probably too much. And we were looking at the St. Leo pitching staff through a couple months. And, so some of the starter ERAs are still sub-2s, and they ultimately put together what was a very impressive season. I know probably outshined a little bit by one of the greater teams in D2 history in terms of run differential in the same conference, but how do you plan to continue that tradition of success? Because I know at my previous question, all your stops, Blackhawk, you had a lot of success. You had a lot of success coaching in the summer in the Northwood Leagues with the Rivets. So I know that you've had a lot of success, but what are some of those principles that you bring to St. Leo to try to continue that tradition here with the Lions?
Right. So I think the biggest thing is we have to continue to build on the tradition that's been in place. This is unique because I am familiar with the roster and the team and the success that St. Leo's had because of my connection with Coach Odette. My brother having played here, I watched games and things like that. But I also would tune in and follow. So I was familiar with what guys were starting on the weekends and the success that they were having, and the guys, who Luke being drafted, Callan Moss, signing. I knew those guys were good just from following along, which makes us even more special because there is familiarity with what we have. How do we continue that? Well, the program was left in a great spot by the previous coaching staff. And so our job now is to continue to build on the tradition that has been in place, having gone to a regional. Our goal is to win the conference championship. It's something that has been at the top of my list of things that I want to accomplish with the team here. I took that in with my interview. Our first team meeting that we had on Zoom is to win our first ever Sunshine State Conference championship. It's a huge task, but we will do what we have to do to at least put us in the best position possible in order to do that. And so obviously with, great pitching like last year's club and great defense and running an offense that can score runs, and, it might be manufacturing runs, things like that. But really, ultimately, it comes down to the standard that we create. And what we have in our program and what we expect of our guys. And so with all that being said, one of the things I did at Blackhawk, one of the things that I plan on doing here is instilling that standard right away. And I've already started to do that in the short amount of time. Our guys will have a better understanding of that next week at our first team meeting. But it's something that we're going to have to work to as a staff every day with our guys and hold those guys to that standard. So that way they can start to run with it and lead it themselves. And so, like I said, there's a great foundation in place right now. And I know we lost some guys. We will continue to build off that strong foundation that we have with new guys and returners and future, players down the road, our 2025 commits, things like that, of what we call is the Lion Way. And that is our standard. And that is something that I have created over my time as a coach, is this thing called the Lion Way. And that's play hard, have fun, do things right. And that's something that I model every day for our guys.
And that's something to definitely appreciate for all you listeners out there, especially players. The Lion Way is definitely a great way to say, hey, like, here's a standard you set. All great teams have a certain standard, and this is one way of showcasing it. And the question I want to bring off of that is, you said there's, bringing in new guys. Now, in terms of a unique perspective, you are a little bit behind the 8 ball compared to most other coaches. You're coming in late June to be the head coach. and you essentially have to get a roster in right away. Talk a little bit about what that experience is like from your perspective to be able to say, hey, like we got to get guys on this team, by August.
We hit the ground running, that's for sure. I mean, there was no time wasted. The minute I accepted the job, passed my NCAA certification, I immediately began after that was signed, sealed, and delivered. And, recruiting from back in Illinois, remotely. And then my first day on campus, we had 2 visits and we just rolled with it. And our goal was to bring in quality guys that fit what we want in a player, in a person, and get those guys locked in as soon as possible. So that way we could get them rolling on housing, get them rolling on anything that we needed to get them done. And again, I had to learn the process of all those things while we were recruiting. And so we were able to replace and bring in quite a few guys in a short amount of time. We'll see how it all works out, right? I don't have that magic 8 ball, so I can't tell you, we're going to be great and things like that, right? I won't know how we are until probably, mid-April after we've played 30 games to see how this club is actually doing. But we have a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about that. And we started immediately, and we were able to, bring in over, when it was all said and done, around 20 guys. And so, we are excited about the competition that we've put in place amongst our roster and on the pitching staff. And I'm excited to see what those guys do with these opportunities that they have, in our program and see what we can do as a team come spring 25.
I am too. I'm looking forward to that as well. And you talk about bringing in guys. You talked about your coaching staff as well. I wanted to ask, and this can go along with the players as well. You talk about St. Leo being a hidden gem. Is part of the hidden gem, and I witnessed it one time personally, just going down to the campus. You kind of look at the campus if you've never been there, and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's an incredible campus. And that was what I took in. And then you talk about the location being in St. Leo. You're in that Tampa area, if I'm not mistaken, and it's just a beautiful spot to be. I want to know, is that a big part of the recruiting pitch, like getting these guys on campus because the facilities and just the things that you can provide student athletes, it's a little bit unique compared to other Division twos. And then 2, it's a 2-pronged question. They're not completely related, but I wanted to get this one in there. Talk about a little bit about Chandler Purcell, because I know that's somebody that you coached. And then you got him, he's then a coach at Quincy in a similar role that you were in, and now he's under you at your staff. And I think the only thing we need to get him to do is change his Twitter pic from a Quincy to St. Leo soon. But I just want you to talk a little bit about Mr. Purcell and what he can bring to the table also.
We'll have to get him a picture at media day or something like that he can change his Twitter picture to. But no, it's really, everything comes full circle at some point. And like with him, that was my first year coaching in 2015 when he was a freshman. And so I saw his entire career through at Quincy. And I was actually looking at pictures on my phone, and there's a picture of when he graduated and of me and him after he had walked across the podium, because they did a graduation. I believe we won the conference tournament at that point in time. And so it was like the day after we got back. And so it's really cool because I coached him. I saw him grow as a player. And then he actually did work for me for a month in Rockford. And then that's when he left and he replaced me essentially at Quincy because that's when I went to St. Leo. And so they needed to hire a guy to bring in, and Chandler was the guy for that job. And so I think it's exciting for him. It's exciting for me. And I think that it also shows that loyalty piece that I was talking about earlier. I think it shows our recruits loyalty, and I'm excited for him down here and to learn just the landscape of the recruiting down here and learn with us as a staff and things like that. But I'm excited for him, and I'm glad he's here with us. But I just think it's really cool, having coached him, and now he gets, we get to work together, and see what we can do, while we're down here. And so, um, and he's also played with Hunter, who is, our pitching coach, and so there's familiarity there, and these ties go way back. And so it's just, for me, it's really cool, because I think that's what this game is about. At the end of the day, are these relationships that you establish, and again, that was like 10 years ago, and so here we are 10 years later. And I think I asked him, did you ever think that you would be working for me at St. Leo in Florida when we first met? And it's probably not, because I didn't think I'd be down here. So, here we are. But the St. Leo, like, with it being a hidden gem, it's just tucked away. It's right off the highway, and you take a couple turns, then all of a sudden you pull up to this campus, and I've never had one recruit or family leave saying nothing but great things about the campus, and they're all surprised, right? I don't think pictures do it justice. You can't go online and look at a picture of it. You have to step on campus to really feel, what it's like to be here, and just take it all in. Because the minute you drive in, you hit the Circle Drive, you see the Lion right there, you take a right, you go over to our stadium, and it's beautiful. Beautiful. And the campus is well maintained, and it's just, I've had jokes like, it doesn't even feel, like you're at a college. It feels like you're at a resort. And
yeah,
it's a great way to put it. It's just, the landscape of the school is phenomenal. And so it gives these kids a home away from home, because of the feeling that you get when you step on campus. There's nothing to complain about. I don't know how you could find anything to complain about when you walk around, or you go to our field, or go to our hitting facility that we have. Everything's well taken care of. There's a lot of pride in this place, from athletics to academics, and the community aspect is huge. And so that is what I'll tell you, is this place is really welcoming, to everybody. And that's what makes it so special.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to put it, and especially a great way to showcase St. Leo as a program too. Hey, come down for a visit. But speaking of special, and you kind of talk about a little bit about coaching. You played under at St. Joe's, and then you coached with a at St. Leo. Now, you're basically taking over as the head coach. What was his impact to help you grow as a coach? One, and then two, what's the opportunity? How excited are you about the opportunity to now coach against him in the Sunshine State Conference?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, I've been really fortunate, and I consider myself lucky, the amount of great coaches that I've been around, and got to learn from at every level I played at. Going back to, when my dad was my coach, and I've played for so many great coaches that you can model yourself after. And when I transferred from Illinois State and went on a visit to St. Joe, and when I got on campus, I didn't really know what to think. When I met him, when we sat down in the office, is when I knew that I wanted to be a college baseball coach. When I met him, and I'm not making this up. He knows this. I've told him the story. I wanted to be a PE teacher. That's what I thought I wanted to do, and just coach high school baseball, which would have been great. I completely changed my major. I had to stay in school a little bit longer, because I wanted to be a college baseball coach because of him. And so his impact that he had on me from the minute that I met him, really changed the outlook of not only my playing career, but also my professional career. He was the one that set me up with Raby at Quincy, to start as a GA. And he's always been a mentor of mine. And so, he married my wife and I. there's these parallels with it that mean a ton to my family and I. And so to be able to take over a program that he built and left his mark on is not something that I take lightly, for sure. But also, I'm excited to coach against him. You know, I worked for him, played for him, and now we get to compete against one another. And I just think that's the beauty in this game, and the things that happen over time when you get in this career is things like this tend to happen, and when you go about it the right way. And so I'm excited about that opportunity. We'll play each other 4 times this year, once in a 3-game conference series, then we'll play midweek at their place. And so I'm excited about that. You know, I'm not going to look at it as, oh, you know, anything special or anything like that in terms of we're going to focus more on this game just because it's OD. That's not the case, right? It's I don't want it to be about that. I want it to be done the right way. But the amount of respect I have for him and really all the coaches that I've either worked for or played for, without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. So he's a huge part of it.
And with the schedule, while we're on the topic, I know that that's been more and more, I don't know if a hot topic's the right word, but it's become more important, more front of mind for a lot of coaches. We've realized over the years, because of the way the NCAA puts teams in the NCAA tournament based off one of the categories, your strength of schedule. Now, while you're in the Sunshine State Conference, you're going to get a pretty good strength of schedule no matter what. However, I wonder, we talk about your staff with Hunter and Chandler and yourself all having Quincy ties. I wonder are you in the future going to have a little bit of a battles with the Hawks with a young man who went to a high school that wasn't too far from yours? Oh, Rock Island, Allman and Rock Island. Are you going to go try to see Mr. Shizzle at all for some non-con action?
We have talked about it for sure. We talked about trying to find a spot on this year's schedule, but it just didn't match with our open weekends. And so I think in the future, I would say that's probably something that will happen. Yes.
Awesome.
Hey, we're excited for it. I mean, it's going to be super exciting. But you know, another thing that's kind of like super exciting is, you know, with this opportunity, you know, being around this. But I want to go back kind of a little bit and get your thoughts. So, like you mentioned it a little bit ago, you know, with the kind of the ever-growing landscape of the transfer portal and how, you know, players will typically change schools. And you had a unique opportunity to basically be at a 2-year school for 4 years, where essentially, you know, guys can only play for 2 years. How does that help you, you know, in today's landscape with the transfer portal at a 4-year school?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's where this game has changed over the last 5 years. And what I learned at the 2-year level is you're essentially building a roster for each year. You know, our classes at Blackhawk were 25. We're bringing in 25 guys, you know, returners. It would just depend. And so each year we are essentially building an entirely new team almost. And what I learned through that was, number one, each team's different. And so we're going to have to find a way to coach this team a little bit different than the year before. But I think what you're seeing now at the 4-year level are these classes are essentially the same size as the 2-year level. And so I think one of the positives for me is I have experience with that over the last 4 years. And so building that team, that roster each year is going to be just like it was at the junior college level. However, you know, if these guys stick around, they develop, now we just have them for, you know, 4 years, which that was the most appealing piece to me, is being able to have these guys longer and really see them grow. Because when I was at Blackhawk, we'd get them right and then they're gone, right? And then they're going somewhere else at a higher level. And so you build them, you develop them, and then by the time you think you got them right, they're completely gone. Whereas here, we've got them for, you know, at least 4 years. and we get to spend more time with them, really see through their development, really see through, like I said, with, being all in on that standard. And I think that's what I'm most excited about, is just being at the 4-year level again and seeing these guys really grow and then move on in either their playing career or professional career after that. But the experience of roster turnover at the junior college level, I think, has prepared me for this now with the landscape of recruiting, to answer it in the simplest of terms. But I'm just excited to have these guys longer.
I mean, that is so interesting too, because the roster construction now, you talk about it at the junior college level, like you said, you get them right. You want them to leave. You want them to go to a Division I. It almost teaches you to accelerate player development, right? This is a guy who's going to junior college for a specific reason. I have to get him right in a year or two, and then he leaves. Whereas at other schools, maybe you get a guy, say it's a big pitcher, a hitter. He's got the tools, he's got a big frame, but you want to work on him for a couple years, maybe junior, senior year. He can be an impact bat. You don't have that luxury where you were. So you have that experience for, I guess, I don't want to say shortcut because there are no shortcuts, but the ability to expedite player development in a way where you're getting guys on campus and you can make quicker fixes, because obviously you want to have those guys that are projectable. But it feels like with the portal now, if you have a little bit of a gap in your roster, you have that experience of filling that specific need while also trying to develop guys over a 4-year span. I find it fascinating now with the changing landscape, because a lot of times, hey, you used to get all these freshmen, none of them play, and then you develop them. And so it's just weird how, not even, I don't know, weird, it's kind of just fascinating how it's all changed, Coach.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what I learned was, how can we, even though player development is a marathon, right? It takes time, and each kid is different, right? Like one kid might make his jump his first fall. One kid might not make his jump until a sophomore fall, whatever it is. But how can we get them to make the jump? What can we put in place to get them to make the jump? And what resources do we have as a staff to aid them through this, right? But ultimately, it's going to be up to that kid. You're going to make the jump or not, right? Like, we can only do so much. But what I've learned is the player development aspect. And that, it's not to say that it wasn't there before, but it's just, how can we make it quicker? What can we put in place to get these kids to really maximize their full ability? And that was my thing at Blackhawk was, I've got them in the fall. How can we get them to the best that they've ever been at the end of the fall? And then we have everything in place. We need to make sure they do their things over winter break. And then when they come back, we got a month. Well, down here, we only have 2.5 weeks or whatever it is, right? And so the timeline is different down here. But how can we get this team ready to go by January 31st? And so that's why, for me, the fall is so important with development. And we have to make sure as a staff that we are doing things the right way and putting these guys in the right situations in the weight room, at practice, with our development individuals, and how they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they need to work on. We will review it, evaluate with it, and with them, and communicate about it. But just getting them in the right spot of where we think they should be. And I think, like, with the portal stuff that's going on, the developmental guys, like the projects, like you said, Will, the project guys, like, for me, those guys aren't going to go away. Like, we're going to have those guys that we're going to work with. And because we do think that, that there's something there, those guys, we're going to stick with those guys. I've always liked having those guys in the program, because those are the ones that typically at the end, like, those are the ones that you're probably most proud of, right? The ones that start from here and then they end at the top, and it might take them a little longer, but those guys are really what I feel that you can build programs off of, right? And because that they really see, and they're great. Really, they're behind your development because they've been through it, right? And that's why I would say it's a marathon, not a sprint. But the way that things have changed, you got to sprint the marathon now. That's just what I think.
Hey, that's a great way of putting it. Sprint the marathon. Write that down somewhere. But the final question I have for you, Coach, and it's more for the fans. For the fans, what would you say to get them excited about St. Leo baseball that you haven't mentioned already?
Well, I think in terms of what kind of brand of baseball are we going to play, we're going to play hard, we're going to have fun, and we're going to do things right. Um, we're going to go about our business, handle our business the right way on and off the field. We'll be a product on the field that our fans can be proud of, that parents, that alumni will be proud of in terms of how we play and represent the university, right? And so that would be the biggest thing is we're going to do things the right way in this program, and we're going to play hard. That's my biggest thing. We're going to play hard. We will pitch and we will play defense, and we will find ways to score runs. The kids will have fun while they do it. We'll have fun out in the community. We'll give back to not just the university, but also the surrounding community. And then our guys, this program will do things right on and off the field. But, really, I want these kids to be proud of what they did here. When you look back in 10 years, these kids can be proud of what they did as a freshman, right? And that's really that part of that standard is we want them returning as proud alumni, and I want alumni that have played here 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago to come back and be proud of what is going on in this program, because we are here because of them, and even though they had different coaches and played for a different head coach at that time, it's still St. Leo University baseball. And so we want our alumni to come back. I have things in place right now that I'm working on to get our alumni a little more involved in the program. And so I'm excited about that. But I really just want this program and this club I want our fans to be proud of the product that we put on the field, the hard work, the dedication, and our guys going about things the right way.
Love that. Final thing for me, and you talked about the campus. I just wanted to urge people, don't shy away from trying to get over there and look at it, because it's kind of like you get out the driver. You think you're on a golf course a little bit, and you can get 18 going on that beautiful greens out there. But with that being said, and however I can transition from that, as we wrap up this interview, you hinted at January 31st, final Friday in January. Is that opening day for you guys?
That's opening day at home against Augusta.
Okay, perfect. I figure because it's always right around that first Friday late, but that's going to be fantastic to get going early. And we certainly have enjoyed our time talking with you about your program and how you've kind of had to get after it right away this summer upon assuming this new position. So we're both really happy for you and the staff that you've put together. And really, it's an amazing place. I know you talked about finding a place to stay. I hope you're all settled in now. And I know that we're both married men, so we're having a great time with that as well with our families.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on here and just shedding some spotlight on the St. Leo University baseball program, our coaching staff, our assistants. No, I really appreciate you guys.